Hey everyone, this is Jono Bacon, and in this Q&A video, I'm going to be answering the question, what is the best way to reward awesome members of your community or company? And if you are going to send them swag, how can you do it when you've got a really, really tight budget? Let's do it. All right, welcome my friends to another Q&A video. Now in these videos, I answer the questions that my members send me. And don't forget that becoming a member is completely free. This is where I'll send you a raft of tips, tricks, best practices, templates, crib sheets, free training, special offers, and a whole host more for how to build amazing communities and teams both inside and outside of businesses. You want to find out more? Click the link in the video description below. All right, so I've had a question from Jessica. Thank you, Jessica, for writing in, who asks, I run a small community of around 200 members who are very excited about what we do. I want to reward my members and would like to send them some swag, but we have very limited funds. Is it worth it, or is there another way in which we can celebrate them that is cheaper? Also, shipping scares me as many of my members are abroad. Now, this is a killer question, Jessica, and one that I think faces pretty much every community out there. The vast majority of communities have a very limited set of funds, and they want to be able to recognize and reward the right kind of work, okay? So I've taken a ton of notes that I want to get into in this video, but I want to start at the beginning and first of all talk about what we're rewarding before we get to how we do it. Okay? Now, in every human system, whether it's a community or a company or something else, what works very, very well is to identify what are the types of behavior that you want to see and encourage. Then how do you layer in the right kind of incentives that will trigger that kind of behavior? And then how do you follow up with the right kind of reward? Now, this can in itself be a little bit complicated. Now, the way I tend to think of it, and I talk about this in my book, People Powered, is we use something called the Community Participation Framework, which I've developed over the course of my career. And it looks a little bit like this. What you do is you first of all identify on the left who your target audience is. Do you want people to be answering questions, creating engineering content, creating written or video content, doing social media, running local groups, whatever it might be. You identify what area you want to attract different types of contributions. You onboard people to doing that very first thing, which is the star. And then community members go through 3 different phases. They start out as casual members. They don't really know anyone. They're not necessarily showing up every day. They're not sure if this is worth their time. Then what happens, generally when they stick around for a couple of months, they then become regular members. This is people who are generally showing up most days each week. They're very excited. They've built those kinds of relationships. They feel welcome. They feel like they've got a level of belonging. And then a very small number of people will become what I call core members. This is generally about 1 in every 100 people. These people are obsessed. They love your community. They're super excited about it. And they go a whole level above everybody else in terms of their commitment, okay? So what we do is the benefit of breaking it into those 3 segments is that we can then layer in incentives, which are those little black bumps in the diagram that will incentivize the right kind of behavior at that particular phase. So for example, the kind of behavior we want to incentivize as a casual member is going to be very different to a regular. With a casual member, we want them to show up more often, for example. We want them to read a lot more content, to consume a lot of content, just get them comfortable with the fruits of the community. Whereas in the regular phase, this is where we're typically going to be encouraging people to generate material, to create new content, to provide mentoring to each other, to come up with new ideas and initiatives that they can focus on, those kinds of things, okay? So first of all, think about what are those incentives and think about what is the behavior that you want to see. That's really critical. What I'd recommend you do right now is you identify, okay, let's break our community into these 3 phases, casual, regular, and core, and let's just come up with 1 or 2 potential incentives or rewards in each of those different areas that we can come up with, okay? Now, the way I like to think about distributing incentives and rewards is there's essentially 2 approaches that I use. And again, I talk about this in People Powered if you want to go and read more about this. The first is called a stated incentive. This is where you basically say, if you do this thing, you will get this thing. So this could be, for example, if you participate in a competition, a hackathon, and you win it, then you get this particular prize. Another example could be when you make your very, very first contribution. Let's say you contribute a piece of code to a project, we will send you a mug, or we will send you a sticker, or whatever it might be, okay? Now, a submarine incentive is instead where you detect the behavior as it's happening, and then you reward people when it happens. So a good example of this that I often talk about is using a platform called Discourse. When someone they have these trust levels, and you can find out more about trust levels in Discourse in my other video, which I'll link in the description below. But basically what happens is when people reach certain levels of participation, they've posted a certain amount, they've read a certain amount, they've had a certain amount of things liked, they go up these trust levels, right? They start at 0, they go to 1, they go to 2, they go to 3. Now, when people hit trust level 2, I'll often say, okay, let's recognize and reward these people in the community because they've automatically hit that. So discourse is detecting this positive level of behavior, and then we react as community managers with the reward. And that can be anything from a piece of swag, or it could be an intrinsic reward. We'll get to that later on, okay? So first of all, think about what are the things that you want to actively recognize, and always focus on behavior first of all, okay? All right, so let's now talk about the different types of rewards that are out there. Now, there's really two types that I like to talk about, and that is extrinsic and intrinsic rewards, okay? So the extrinsic rewards are the things that you send people. It's the swag that you asked about in your question, Jessica. The intrinsic rewards are ways of rewarding people and validating them without sending them something, right? So let's first of all talk about the extrinsic rewards. Now, there's two things to really consider here. The first thing is being able to buy things in bulk cheaply. And then secondly, how do we ship them as effectively as possible? Now, one example everybody talks about when it comes to swag is t-shirts. And I would strongly recommend you don't put together t-shirts as something you send to people, okay? There's a couple of reasons for this. One is that generally there's too many variables, right? First of all, you've generally got kind of two cuts. You've got, there's kind of the t-shirts that most women will wear are very different to t-shirts that most men will wear. And for example, I've seen many times over the years women getting incredibly frustrated because they are given kind of t-shirts that are cut for men and they just don't look very good, okay? So to do this well, you really need, t-shirt cuts for men and women. And then of course you can have multiple sizes within each of those different cuts. Even if you just go with small, medium, and large, right, in each of those two different cuts, that's 6 variations. But of course, you and I both know it's not that simple. You're going to have people who need extra small or, 5XL, also known as system administrator medium, okay? You're going to need to figure out having the right number of sizes in stock for both of those cuts. And you never really know how many you're going to need. If I can't tell you you're going to need more mediums in the men's cut, or you're going to need more small in the women's cut, or more XL in the men's cut, or whatever it might be. I just can't tell you that. We don't know. So it's a nightmare. You've got to buy a lot of t-shirts, many of which you'll probably never end up sending out because, a t-shirt that's L size is useless to someone who's S size, okay? So they're just not very good. And also you've got to buy generally you've got to kind of pay for the print screen. That's usually like $50 or $100 just to get that before you then even get into the actual purchasing of the shirts themselves. So t-shirts suck, okay, as a general rule. What's nice about them is people will walk around with them and they're branded, and that's great. But also a lot of people who send t-shirts out to people, they just don't look very good. And my view is, I'm only going to wear a t-shirt that I think looks cool, like this one, for example. One of the reasons why I'm wearing this t-shirt is to use it as an example in this video. This looks cool. I mean, it's difficult to see because it's a little dark in here, but it's just kind of a cool, nice, it's got something on the back as well. Like, it's just a cool looking design that I like, and I'm happy to wear it. Now, this isn't a tech shirt or a community shirt, this is a band shirt. But my recommendation to people is, if you're going to do t-shirts, make sure that they look cool, that people are actually going to want to wear them. So I'd instead focus on items that you can buy in bulk, where there's no variation in sizes or specification, right? So an example of this could be something called a challenge coin. These are big, thick, meaty coins that the military historically have sent out to people, and they're pretty cool. They generally cost $2 or $3 a piece to make. You can make them look really cool. You can pop them into an envelope, and they just feel nice and satisfying and meaty, okay? People will put them on their desks. People will carry them around to conferences, things like that. Another good example would be stickers, right? You can easily send stickers to people. Or another example could be sending somebody, for example, a statue, like something that you design that goes to people who've reached a certain level in the community. So for example, with YouTube, when people get 100,000 subscribers, they'll send them, I think it's called the silver button, which is a button that's inside of kind of a picture frame that they send to people. And the only thing they'll customize is the plate that goes underneath it. The actual picture frame and everything is all the same, okay? So they're cheap and effective for people to be able to put together. What I'm a big fan of is where you personalize the gifts to the individual. So let's say for the sake of example, you want to reward someone. It's the very first reward that you want to send them in your community. You go onto social media and you find out that they're dog people, right? They love dogs. They're always posting pictures of their dogs. Or maybe what you could do is go and find some organic dog treats within their town. Let's say they live in Portland. You're almost certainly going to find organic dog treats in Portland, right? And then you could just send them from Portland, right? So they're going to be cheaper to ship, but they're personalized to that particular individual, right? So I love sending people that are more personal to them as opposed to just sending them whatever branded tat you've got in stock, okay? So that's really, really important. Now, the other element to this, of course, is shipping, and shipping is a problem. There's just no doubt about it. Shipping is really difficult for a number of reasons. One is, in many cases, you're going to be shipping abroad, right? And you mentioned this, Jessica, in your question. If you're shipping abroad, the challenge with this is it becomes very, very expensive, right? So let's say, for the sake of argument, you're based in the US, Jessica, and you want to ship, let's say, some stickers and a challenge coin and something else to somebody in, let's say, the Netherlands, right? Well, you're going to have to ship from the US to the Netherlands. That's going to be expensive because it's an international shipment. And in many cases, the cost of the shipping will actually outweigh the material that's inside of the package, right? There's been many times when I've experienced this. When I was at XPRIZE and we did the Global Learning XPRIZE, we had a crowdfunding campaign where people could buy perks, and it was like a little 3D printed XPRIZE logo, and we sent them a book and a t-shirt and various other bits and pieces. And in many cases, the cost of the shipping was more than the items that we were sending, okay? That's one problem. The second problem is that in many countries in the world, they just don't have good postal tracking services, right? So if you're going to ship something abroad, you ideally want to know that it actually got there, because if it doesn't get there, it's going to be returned back to you, and then you're going to be back at square one, and you've got to ship it back out to them, okay? There's been times where, and again, we had to do this at XPRIZE, where we had to send out the same thing 2 or 3 times before it got there. There was one thing that we sent out, it cost us $180 in total to ship, and it had about $15 worth of content inside of it. And that's just ludicrous. It just doesn't make any sense, okay? So it's really important that you can ship as cheaply, as effectively as possible. Now, there are various options you can take for this. So for example, one of the things I do when I ship people powered is there's the US Postal Service has got something called book rate. It costs about $4 to ship a book, something that's going to be about the size of a hardback book within a package. Another great way to ship is to only send people stuff that can fit in an envelope. So I mentioned earlier on, for example, challenge coins, stickers, things such as that. You can put those into an envelope. They don't necessarily have to go into a box, okay? So think about the weight, the size, and the destination, and judge whether that's the right kind of solution that you're wanting. I know many communities that will, for example, quite happily give out swag and things like that in person at conferences, but they will never ship to them because they just can't afford the shipping side of them, okay? And I think that's more than reasonable. Now, the one final thing I do want to say about extrinsic rewards is that whenever you send anyone anything, always send them a handwritten note, okay? Always. You got to definitely make sure that you do this, okay? The reason why is it just feels very, very personal. Even if you send them the organic dog treats to Portland, you're going to send someone a challenge coin, or you're going to send someone a trophy, or you're going to send them a book, whatever it might be. Always try and personalize it with your handwriting in some kind of way, okay? So just write a little handwritten note. But here's a little pro tip, okay? When you sign it, do not sign it with your normal signature, okay? Like, you'll notice, any of you who've got one of my books, whenever I sign my books, I sign it Jono Bacon. I never sign it J Bacon. You know why? Because J Bacon is the signature that I use on credit cards and legal documents, and I don't want people forging it, okay? So do not use your normal signature, because it may be forged. All right, so let's now talk about intrinsic rewards. This is the cheaper and, frankly, in many cases, more effective way of recognizing and rewarding people, okay? So Jessica, one of the things you asked in your question here was, is it worth it? Or is there another way in which we can celebrate them that is cheaper? Well, this is what intrinsic rewards are all about. So an intrinsic reward is where you don't send someone something, but what you do is you actively recognize the amazing work that they've done, okay? So I'll give you an example. Earlier on, I talked a little bit about trust levels in discourse, right? And when people go up these trust levels. Now, when people get to trust level 2 in discourse, this is kind of a big deal, right? They've been shown up to the community quite a bit. It usually takes a couple of months to get there. And they've been very, very active. And what we want to do is we want to really recognize them in our community. What I almost always do is we'll recommend to my clients and to other communities that when someone hits trust level 2, you write a new topic on discourse and you say, hey, congratulations to whatever their name is, post a picture of them and say, thank you so much for joining our community. You've done these amazing things. Here are some examples of some of the amazing work that this particular person has done. Hey, everybody, just, give them a pat on the back, okay? So what happens is, even though they're not receiving something through the mail, what they're doing is they're getting social recognition. First of all, it delivers validation. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel recognized. Validation is critical to all of us. I don't care whether you're the CEO of a major international company or whether you are picking up the trash. Not that there's anything wrong with picking up the trash. In fact, thank you, trash people. I would never want to do what you do. It's hard manual labor. I'm not very good at manual labor. As far as I'm concerned, manual labor is a Spanish musician. Thank you, trash people. This is not a slur towards you. My point is it doesn't matter what your job is. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. Everybody needs validation. When somebody comes up to you and says, hey, love what you just did there. That's awesome. Congratulations. You know, we love having you part of our company, a part of our family, as part of our community. It means a lot. And that's what intrinsic rewards are all about, okay? So when you post that little post celebrating someone hitting trust level 2 in Discourse, it's doing exactly that. It also generates the social proof. Other people come in here and they thank you, and other people come in and thank you. And what happens is now your social capital, right, which is critical in building reputation in any community, is growing, okay? And that's why intrinsic rewards are so powerful. Is it provides social definition, and it also provides validation, okay? So there's loads of different options you can come up with here. For example, one thing that can be very, very simple is just sending someone a thank you email. You know, so for example, somebody contributes their first, bit of content to your community, just drop them a note and say, hey, I just want to say, really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for that. You know, it could be the forum post, the public forum post that I just mentioned. You could invite them to community planning calls. You know, this is something I often do when people get into the core phases, is bring them into the team meetings, help them feel part of how to shape and tune this community. Maybe send them some free content. You could send them a free ebook. You know, there's no reason why you can't send them paid for things that are digitally sent, such as, free video games or ebooks or free training courses, whatever it might be. You know, with my training courses, people in my community, I often send them free access to my courses because I'm like, you deserve this, you're awesome, okay? Another great intrinsic reward is what I call the bat phone, which is where you set up an email address that goes to the leaders of the community or the leaders of the company. You know, with a previous company, we did this, and their top, most active members of their community, they had an email address that went straight to the executive team. And frankly, they've basically never used it, but they knew that they could. They knew they had the option, and that's what the intrinsic rewards are all about. So anyway, hope that was useful, Jessica. This is what I wanted to get into. So in summary, okay, determine what are the most critical types of behavior you want to recognize and reward, okay? Break it into the casual, the regular, and the core phases, and pick at least 2 in each phase that you can recognize and reward. Try to think about the most efficient way in which you can send swag to people. If you are going to focus on sending swag to people, avoid customizable things such as t-shirts, right? Try to get the shipping down as cheap as possible. Think about what you can put into an envelope, but really focus first of all on those intrinsic rewards. That's in many cases where you can get absolutely the most value in sending people and rewarding people with material, with content, and of course with recognition, okay? Hope that was useful. If you like this video, hit the like button, and of course, click that subscribe button and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with future videos. And I'll see you on the other side.